Hi guys, it's Mark Zickery, Mr. Sci-Fi. It's Mark Zickery, Mr. Sci-Fi. I am at the screening of the restored version of Star Trek: The Motion Picture on the Paramount lot. This is Old Home Week, and it's really great to be here. So we'll talk soon. Just wanted to say hi, and I'll let you know how it goes. So, it's the next day after the Paramount screening, and it was an amazing event, both in terms of where I was, who I ran into, and the film itself. First off, my first story editing job was on the Paramount lot on Friday the 13th series, and that's just when Star Trek The Next Generation was beginning filming, before it was even airing. And so I got to see, every day I got to see that cast in costume and makeup. They would often dine together at the Paramount executive dining room. It was really fun, and many of them would become friends in years to come, as would many of the writers working on the show ultimately. And so it was great to be there, and also a lot of alumni from various generations of Star Trek were there. So David Gerrold, who wrote Trouble's Tribble, and who went to college with Elaine, and Mike Okuda, who's one of the great, Mike and Denise Okuda, they're great Star Trek experts and designers, and just on and on, and then they showed the film, and it was the best version of the film ever made. It was when Robert Wise was dying. For those who don't know, Robert Wise was one of the great directors of cinema. He edited Citizen Kane. He directed many films, including The Andromeda Strain, Day the Earth Stood Still, West Side Story, Sound of Music. I mean, he was just a huge talent. And in 1977, Star Wars came out, and so Paramount had been planning to do a new Star Trek TV show called Star Trek Phase 2. They'd gotten all the cast back, except for Nimoy, who was battling over licensing rights of his image and regarding the products, and so they cast another actor to play a new Vulcan, Zon, X-O-N, and Persis Kambata, who played Ilia, was going to be one of the regulars on the TV show. He was going to start a new Paramount network. We're talking 1977, 78, and and then Star Wars came out. And so they spent a year building sets, doing tests, buying scripts. They had a whole season of scripts, including my friend Michael Reeves pitched a great Sulu story that ultimately he and I ended up making with George Takei, which is World Enough in Time, which you can watch here on Mr. Sci-Fi. And it was just phenomenal. And so then Star Wars came out, and Paramount switched tactics and decided to do a movie instead. And it took them 2 years to get the movie out to the public. So it came out in 1979, and it was a very tight post-production window. And so many of the visual effects were rushed. They had John Dykstra from Star Wars. They had Doug Trumbull from 2001, A Space Odyssey. Later he would do Blade Runner and Close Encounters, an amazing visual effects genius. And but they were very frustrated because they knew some of the visual effects weren't done quite. The model effects, the models they built at the Starship Enterprise were spectacular. And this was, Star Trek ended in 1969, the original show, and it spent a decade growing in popularity. And everyone was rooting for Star Trek to come back, all the science fiction fans. And finally, after 10 years, it came back. And it was a big movie, and a big movie event. They got Jerry Goldsmith, one of the great composers who'd been a writer on, and he wrote the scores for Twilight Zone and for Planet of the Apes and many other great films. And there he was, on Star Trek: The Motion Picture, a great score. And there were many things they did in this film. They reinvented the Klingons. Previously, the Klingons were kind of like space Russians with beards and mustaches, but they decided to make them look more alien, and so they cast Mark Leonard, who previously played a Romulan in Balance of Terror on Star Trek, and then Spock's father in Journey to Babel, and now he got to play the third in the great troika of Star Trek Aliens. He played the Klingon commander at the beginning of Star Trek, the motion picture. But the costumes kind of looked like some of the characters were ready to go off and play tennis, and they were very kind of pale compared to the bright colors of the original show, and for running time they cut out all the great character scenes. So when the movie came out, it was all about V'ger and flying through this alien spaceship, and it just left Star Trek fans feeling unfulfilled. But when it came out on home video, there were deleted scenes, and we all saw that there were some great character scenes that had been cut out needlessly because the studio hadn't understood. And they did this with many other films, The Abyss and so forth. Many films, the best shots were on the cutting room floor. The best scenes were on the cutting room floor, and thank God for home video, because that's when you start to see deleted scenes and then director's cuts. And many of the director's cuts on films are far superior to the theatrical release. So Star Trek: The Motion Picture came out. It made money, but it wasn't a huge blockbuster like Star Wars. And they decided to make a second Star Trek movie, and they hired Nicholas Meyer, and he had a lower budget, so he had to use a lot of scrap, a lot of stock footage from the first film, but they did Wrath of Khan, and that really set the tone for Star Trek movies and kept the franchise alive. And so then Star Trek: The Motion Picture kind of languished as being sort of like the first adventure, theatrical adventure, but not quite good enough. And then on home video we saw the deleted scenes, and then as the century turned, they asked Robert Wise to do a restored director's version with visual effects done that were in keeping with what the intent of the film had been. But that only came out on DVD, and it was a great improvement. It added back in character moments. It had some very nice visual effects shots, because in the original home video release of Star Trek: The Motion Picture, they kind of took stuff off the cutting room floor, and they had a shot of Kirk coming out of the Enterprise ostensibly in a spacesuit, and if you looked behind him, they hadn't put in the matte painting, so you saw the rafters of the soundstage, roof, ceiling, and so it was like he was coming out of a spaceship made of wood, and but that shot is now no longer there, and a number of visual effects artists, brilliant visual effects artists who had worked on subsequently in the years after on Star Trek: Next Generation and Babylon 5, many other great films and TV shows, were brought aboard to work on the reimagining of Star Trek: The Motion Picture. And so Mojo, who I first met on Babylon 5 and then he did Battlestar Galactica, and Darren Dochterman, who was a great Star Trek visual effects artist, they were brought aboard. And on the new version, Darren Dochterman was the visual effects supervisor. I saw Mojo there last night. Both of them are interested in working on Space Command, which I would highly welcome. They're brilliant, both of them. And so what they did in the new version, but the new version isn't just an upscaling in terms of, an upscaling in terms of the film. They've reinvented it, because when he was dying, Robert Wise said to David C. Fine, the producer of this new version, please promise me that you will make it not just of home video quality, but of theatrical release quality. And that's what they did. So this is 4K resolution. It is now, they've brought in a ton of new visual effects shots that are just gorgeous. They color corrected. The original film, because it was rushed, they hadn't done correct color grading, which is how the color balance is on the film. And so it looked washed out. The characters in their pastel costumes kind of blended into the background, into the sets, and we didn't have any vibrancy. And so in the new version, the colors have been brought back to what they should be. And so the costumes, you see that they have richness of color, blues and tans, and you see details in color on the sets that you've never seen before, and the skin tones of the actors, and just everything phenomenal and wonderful. And the thing moves along at a wonderful pace, and it's got just great things in it. There's a few still little visual effects glitches from the original version, but not many, and there are many new strengths, and it's just gorgeous. I highly recommend it. If you've seen it before, see it now, and if you haven't seen it before, see it now. And it is just a wonderful piece of writing. It is somewhat inspired by the episode of with Nomad in the original Star Trek, but that's okay. That's okay. At this long remove, we can forgive it, its weaknesses, and celebrate its strengths. The cast is wonderful. Leonard Nimoy is great. Shatner, all of the regular cast. Persis Khambatta is just a revelation. Sadly, she died very young, but she is very beautiful and very just a wonderful person. And so in conclusion, I would urge you to watch it. It's now on Paramount Plus. If you subscribe to that, you can watch the 4K version, and it'll also be coming out on 4K and Blu-ray very, very soon, and I urge you to get the 4K if you have a TV that can screen that, and invite your friends over and have a party. So that's about it for now. Much more to come, but we will talk very soon, and thanks a lot for being there, guys. Bye.